everybody, it is Calxiyn and Hunter here. If you guys enjoyed this video, remember to subscribe, become patrons over on Patreon to support the channel, and follow us over on social media. So, today we're going to be talking about some Oscar-related shenanigans, some drama. You know what I mean? Okay, so we talked about this in another video, and I think it was the RWBY versus Ironwood debate, but basically our entire sort of thesis was that Oscar is the next Ozpin, and that it is insensitive of RWBY or some sort of overstepping for her to decide what he should tell Ironwood about Ozpin, because Oscar is Ozpin, and Oscar should be able to decide, you know, what he's gonna tell about Ozpin's life to Ironwood and what he's gonna tell about what he knows to Ironwood, because, like, that is his, I don't want to say that is his right, like, as the next Ozpin, but it's sort of one of those things where it's like, that is his life now. He is Oscar, and even though RWBY is the leader of her team, we sort of discussed that Oscar may be like, you know,
but
you shouldn't have overstepped. Right? I should get to decide. I'm in charge, you know?
I used to be like your boss, motherfucker.
And so it's one of those things where it's like everyone was just so hostile and took it out on Oscar when Ozpin was the one who lied to them, and now they won't even let Oscar, as Ozpin, make his own fucking decisions. Does that make sense? Like, make his own choices, right? And so I would really like to see that sort of anger from Oscar, and not necessarily like super angry, but at least
he doesn't seem like a very angry person.
You know
if
what
anything,
I mean?
he's more like confused and scared.
Yeah, I know, but maybe that's where we'll see a new emotion from him, where it's like
character development.
You know, I just feel like if I were Oscar, I would be like, sis, like, what the fuck? Like, this is my story to tell, and you're the one who decided to tell it, and you didn't even do what I wanted you to do, okay? And so that's how I feel. I feel like Oscar feels like he has been pushed aside and maybe his opinion doesn't matter. You know what I mean? And I think that's very interesting for, like, the position for him to be in right now. Because, you know, people are like, oh, well, Oscar hasn't done anything. Oscar doesn't really matter, right? And so this is, you know, a meta sort of situation as well, where it's like Oscar has to do something that makes him matter. And I feel like, again, if I were Oscar, I would be a little peeved at RWBY for deciding what I would like to tell for me, instead of, you know, Oscar seemed willing to tell Ironwood the truth, and RWBY went against that. And I understand why RWBY did that, but RWBY didn't do that with any consideration for what Oscar wanted to do as Ozpin. Does that make sense? Like, I don't know what a better analogy would be for it, but you hear a lot about people like, that wasn't your story to tell.
Yes.
I wanted to tell that. And I'm not going to compare this to something like real life, but the only thing I can think of is, like, when somebody, like, outs someone online for being gay or something like that. Like, that wasn't your story to tell. That was supposed to be me telling that. I'm not comparing Oscar and Ozpin to, like, some sort of coming out story. I'm just like, that's the first thing I can think of where people use that phrase. I think the coming out thing actually sort of works for this.
It does kind of work in that, you know, this is supposed to be my responsibility. I was like, Oscar is like, well, Oscar prepared himself to be Ozpin, to be the leader, and then he finds himself like Ozpin having ostensibly in a lot of ways betrayed people. He, like, didn't exactly ingratiate them to Oscar in a lot of ways. Yeah. And now Ozpin has left Oscar. Yeah, Ozpin has left Oscar, and now he's just kind of by himself. Yeah. So he's in this weird position of, it's almost like he's the leader. Yeah. He's in the place of the leader, but the actual leader isn't there. Yeah. So he's in this weird in-between space. Yeah. So on one hand, I understand why he would be upset, because he's like, well, I'm supposed to be the leader. But I also understand why RWBY would be like, no, Ozpin's the leader. Ozpin's not here. You're a farmhand who just learned how to fight. Take this keychain. I'm gonna go out with the big boys and kill a geist.
And I feel like that will make Oscar very upset. But I feel like that, when you put it that way, Hunter, the way I sort of think about it is really that, when it comes to Oscar specifically and his relationship to the rest of the team, he hasn't really had or I guess almost the opposite. Oscar has been mentally preparing for this. He is ready to tell Ironwood the truth. And what do? They like, stop on him. This was the only thing he could be ready for, and y'all deny him. Y'all deny him the chance to sort of rectify Ozpin's wrongs. And I feel like that, like, you know, two wrongs don't make a right. Like, this isn't right. Oh, now I remember what I was gonna say. I was struggling there for a second. To me, this is almost like, I guess, like Blake's situation and like sort of the white thing. Like you sort of have the the situation with Ilya and like her parents dying and then her punching her friends and stuff like that and telling Blake this story and all that stuff. And so even with the White Fang situations and like Adam having the scar, it's like if Blake had like told everyone like Adam got branded by the SDC, like that's not Blake's story to tell. And she didn't do that. I'm just saying hypothetically. Or if she said something about Ilya or whatever the case may be. Or even other people like telling other people that Blake was a faunus. Right?
That wasn't their place.
Like, that wasn't their place to say that. And so I feel like this situation is very similar when it comes to Oscar as those situations. And I feel like that we've never really dealt with it because Blake didn't have a conversation about racism when people told everyone she was a faunus without her permission, right? And I feel like it's a weird consent thing. Does that make sense? Like,
yes.
I know that sounds so weird to say, like, the coming out thing, but yeah, it is. It's like Oscar, they did something that Oscar didn't want them to do, and, it was his choice whether to do it or not. And again, it is sort of like the Blake thing. Like, Blake did not consent to having her identity be sort of put out there like that, and for people to know she was a faunus. She would have told people when she was ready. Oscar was ready to tell Ironwood. And Ruby just sort of stepped on him. So I am hoping that in the future, when Ironwood and Oscar are both training, like, together, Oscar will just spill the beans and be like, I'm Ozpin. Fuck you. I'm gonna say whatever I want, Ruby. You know what I mean? And that could cause a lot of conflict because I doubt that Ironwood would be super, super pissed at them like at Ruby hiding it. Like, it sort of depends on, I feel like Ironwood would be more angry about the news than who hid the news from him. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah. And so I feel like he would be willing for Oscar to like tell his story and his truth and whatever's going on here.
Tell your truth,
right?
Oscar.
Tell your truth, Oscar. Right? But it's sort of one of those things where I'm like, I bet you any money during that training sequence, Oscar is going to be like, Ironwood, like, I want to talk to you.
About something.
I feel like I can't.
Cut to black.
You know what I mean? Like, I feel like I can't. And then Ironwood's like, you can tell me anything, Oscar. I'm here for you. Just as I was here for Oz. Little bow situation, that's how I sort of feel about that.
Even though I didn't listen to him all those times.
And then everybody will get called back, and then Ruby will be like, Oscar, what the fuck? And Oscar will be like, you don't get to decide anymore. I'm in charge.
I'm Ozpin, but you're not Ozpin. Ozpin has left the building.
You know what I wonder?
What?
What if Oscar pretended that Ozpin was back?
Oh,
and tricked
shit.
everyone, because how are they gonna know? They don't know. So what if like Oscar practices mimicking like Ozpin's voice and all that stuff? Like, what if because they blend together really well. Like, I think it's still Aaron Dukeman, when it's not in his head, right? Like when Oscar's talking out loud. So what if Oscar decides to pretend that Ironwood has come out of hiding, like little mind hiding, so Oscar can be like. Ruby, it is Ozpin here. I say that we tell Ironwood the truth. And then Oscar, it's not really Ozpin. It's Oscar just lying to everyone. And then there's layers to that, right? Yeah. Because there's layers because it's like Oscar is lying, but he's lying so he can do what he wants. And Ruby lied so she could do what she wanted. And like, you know what I mean? Because Oscar's like, technically this is lying. But is it? And so there's some moral layers and hypocrisy and like, that's so spicy. I hope that he does that. Imagine he pretended he's not even for real.
I always feel like this kind of reminds me of when we predicted that the Oscar that returned in Volume 6 wasn't Oscar but Neo, and he poisoned the casserole.
But this is
I
much
feel like
better.
this is similar in that we always keep on thinking something dastardly is going to happen involving Oscar. But,
I would love this. I would love this so much if he pretended. Oh my god. And he mimicked the voice and did everything, and he's just like, I am Ozpin. I've come out of my hiding.
I feel like Crow would try to quiz Oscar on things that only Ozpin would know. And Oscar
but now you know
like,
the whole life,
fuck.
you know what I mean? Like Oscar knows more than Crow even knew now.
Potentially.
So,
I mean, he knew about Jin.
And like, do you remember the T-set thing? Yeah. And so like, didn't Oscar recall, or I guess that was Ozpin talking.
That was Ozpin.
But I'm sure like Oscar knows some of those things now. For some reason.
Maybe like Oscar or Ozpin bought Crow his flask.
No, that
or
would be
something like.
Cute. I like that.
He enabled his alcoholism.
Oh,
what
yeah,
a
that's
sweetums.
not cute. But yeah, conflict. Oscar and RWBY conflict. Can't
Good
wait for
shit.
Oscar to actually do something. I think this was a great video. But yeah, we will see you guys later. Hope that you guys enjoyed. Bye. Thank you to all the patrons over on Patreon who support our channel. Their names will be showcased now.